Hey, I'm Melita, and this is my channel, The Midnight in the Brain, and today I'll be talking about my March wrap-up. So for the month of March, I participated in Realmathon. This is hosted by CoverswithCassidy, who I'll have linked down below, as well as her announcement, etc. It was really fun. I was on Team Blood with co-host Steph from Stephaniebookish and Syd from Syd BookWorroms. It ultimately was fun. I was gung-ho for it at the beginning of the month, and then always, I feel like when it comes to reading, by the end of the month it kind of crashed and burned. So, but I was still happy. I don't know what the result that was. I will have it here if it was ever announced. I know for a while Team Blood was like, I don't know if we were in last place or what, but I ultimately had no idea. I just kept reading and kept submitting my points. So otherwise it felt like March was just kind of a throwaway month in a way of just like, you know, it's not quite winter, it's not quite spring. And so weather, of course, was just terrible. It snowed, it rained, it was sunny, it was just chaotic. And ultimately, like, I think everyone was just waiting for March to be done. It doesn't help that the CSU system has spring break during March, and it ended on St. Patrick's Day. And so when everyone came back, like, I even had a question going, like, asking me if our library was extremely busy or like we were gearing up for like a big rush come that Monday morning. And I'm like, no, why? No one wants to be here. The rush isn't until like finals week. What are you talking about? So yeah, everyone's just kind of slugging away. I know that for myself, when it came to school, spring was always just terrible because the weather would be getting nicer and I was just biting at the bit to like want to be outside and not inside studying. So it feels like March is just kind of that throwaway month that everyone's just kind of waiting for to get over with. Not to say I didn't have a good time. Did read 10 books for the month of March, which I'm really kind of excited about. I'm liking this consistency of 10 books per month so far. Hopefully I didn't just jinx myself. Let me knock on wood there real quick. My soft goal was 10. If you don't know, I do a soft goal that I don't let you guys know about, because if I do let you guys know about it, it then becomes mandatory for me, and I don't need that. Soft goal was 10. I reached that number. Secretly, I was hoping to get more just because I do have a couple reads that I'm in the middle of that I was hoping to get done. Once I hit 10, I was like, okay, I'm good. I also just didn't want to push myself because I swear I was like teetering on a reading slump. So that equates to 2,667 pages, 58.86 hours listened to. We have 2 contemporary, 3 fantasy, 2 horror, 1 magical realism, 1 nonfiction, and 1 paranormal. We have 1 graphic novel, 8 novels, and 1 novella. 1 of them were debuts, 5 were new to me, and 4 authors I've read from before. 7 of them were audiobooks, 3 were physical. All 10 were traditionally published, with Penguin Random House being the top publisher with 3. And in terms of where I acquired them, I got 1 from the bookstore, 7 from the library, and 2 from Libro. Audience, I have 8 adult, 1 YA, and 1 middle grade. For the year published, we have 1 from 2021, 3 from 2022, 1 from 2018, 1 from 2017, and 4 from 2023. And then in terms of countries, we have mostly the United States. Most all of these books were set in the United States. There was 1 in particular that we kind of traveled to Norway. But other than that, we were very United States bound. There was also another one that I actually DNF'd. That was set in Mexico, so I'll talk about that here in a bit. Otherwise, let's get into my rating breakdown. I have 0 1 star, 0 2 stars, 1 3 star, 4 3.5 stars, 3 4 stars, and 2 4.5 stars, giving my average rating for the month a 3.8. I also have 2 DNFs. I did finally test out this book tracking, and it does count the books for my reading, and I don't like that. So let's go ahead and get into the books that I DNF'd, just so that you're aware though that in case you're new here, hi, welcome, thank you for joining us. Otherwise, I don't count my DNFs towards my stats just because I don't consider them read. That's just my personal preference. I know others do it differently. Do it how you want. This is how I do it. So let's talk about the books I DNF'd. Okay, so the 2 books that I DNF'd, both were Pokemon TBR picks. They were both the Barboaches. One was reverse holo, so it was to read a backlist, and the other one was regular. Both of them were water, so it was to read a book in a different country, continent, or planet. And I'm pretty sure the regular Barboach was the first DNF, and that was Sleeping World by Gabrielle Lucille Fuentes. This one we're following a young woman in 1977 Spain who is trying to find her brother, and it's chaos. It's chaotic. Mosca's intelligent and disillusioned university student whose younger brother disappeared, taken by police 2 years ago and presumed dead. But when Mosca and her friends commit acts that takes their rebellion too far and sends them spiraling out of their provincial hometown, the further they go, the more Mosca believes her brother is alive. I just wasn't clicking with it. I read the first couple chapters and just didn't quite understand what was going on, and ultimately just wasn't interested, so I decided to DNF it. You know what? Life's too short to try to push myself to read books that I'm not interested in. I've had this for a while. I am kind of disappointed that I didn't enjoy it at all, or that I couldn't get into it. Mostly also because it's on my 24 of 2024. But I'm realizing this is what my 24 of 2024 is to read books that are on my Goodreads TBR and try them out and see if they're worth keeping on there or not, or like, you know, picking up books that I wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm glad I finally picked this up because I have had it for a while, but I will be getting rid of it. So and then the next one was my reverse holo Barboach. And I'm really kind of scared of announcing this, but I DNF Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I know this is a booktube darling. I know that everyone and their mother loves this book. I could not understand why. I got 70% of the way into this book and just didn't care. Yeah, people were comparing this to What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, or saying that if you like the vibes of What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, that this book very much gives the same feeling. Yes, of sorts, but the difference is that where What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher was a novella. This is not. And by 70% of the way in, nothing happened. It was just taking too long. I really didn't care. I was growing more frustrated and uncomfortable, if anything. And I think that was kind of the point, but ultimately I just don't feel like this is the book for me, which I'm really kind of disappointed in. I would have loved to jump on the hype train for this book, but unfortunately it just wasn't for me. Cover is absolutely gorgeous. A little sad about this, but at the same time glad that I did finally try it out. It was one of those frustrating things though, that because I was 70% of the way through it, I feel like I should have just pushed my way through. But seriously, like, I was on a teetering point of being in a reading slump, and I didn't want to plunge into that. So I DNF'd. So sorry. This is like my second attempt. That is Silvia Moreno Garcia. I did read of Jade and Shadow, something of the sort, and was disappointed in that one. I read it all the way through, but like, I was disappointed in that one, so maybe Silvia Moreno Garcia just isn't an author for me. But I do have a couple other of her books, so I'll still give her a try. But this one just didn't do it. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the books that I did read for the month of March, and the first being, excuse me, I sneezed and now my nose is acting up. The first is Trail of the Lost, The Relentless Search to Bring Home the Missing Hikers of the Pacific Crest Trail by Andrea Langford. This one is a nonfiction. It also did not count for the Realmathon because I had mostly finished the book in the month of February and then like finished the last like hour or so in the month of March, so I didn't count it. Just because that was part of the rules too, was that like you kind of the majority of the book should be read in Realmathon. So I didn't count this, but this was a nonfiction. It was when I have been interested in it. I actually got it through Libby, through my county library, and I was very intrigued just because it was very reminiscent of Trailed, which was solving murders on the Appalachian Trail. And I've heard of the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail. I've not been to either, but it actually took me a really long time. I've like heard about the Appalachian Trail, and like it took me forever to realize that Pacific Crest Trail was essentially like the West's response, that they something that they wanted, which this book goes over. It goes over the history of the Pacific Crest Trail. It also goes over other missing people that have gone missing and found on the Pacific Crest Trail, but Andrea Langford was ultimately like, I think she was she a game warden? No. I think she worked for National Park Service to search for missing people. So that was a really interesting perspective. I will say that there have been interesting negative reviews for this book, and some of which I can understand that a lot of people were going like, this was very unfulfilling in a way. And I mean, I'm gonna spoil it for a little bit for you guys. She never finds the 3 missing people. They're still missing, but the story that Andrea Langford talks about in terms of getting involved with all 3 of these missing people and the search for them is really interesting. And the fact that she goes into the history of the Pacific Crest Trail and as well as the history of missing people and like the different search efforts to go forth with that. I also think that a lot of negative reviews are because that she actually ends up exposing a new missing person technology thing that is actually like scientific bullshit, because it's essentially the modern day equivalent of a dowsing rod but for like DNA that supposedly is like a nail clipping or hair and can find it within like 200 yards or something like that. But of course there's going to be mistakes, but ultimately like it's a scam. I haven't looked all that into it, so I am trusting that Andrea Langford knows what she's talking about, but like because she's talked negatively about this thing, that I'm wondering, it's like there's a lot of comments that are just like, this doesn't like you don't know how science works. And I'm just like, I mean, not fully, but it doesn't work like that. So I don't know. I think because there are people out for her because she talked negatively about this like modern day dowsing rod. So I don't know. It's very interesting. It's very weird. There's like some kind of conspiracy with that. But ultimately, I enjoyed the book. I had no idea where she was talking about. That was the one thing that was taking me out of the story. And maybe that was because I only listened to it via audio. Like maybe it would have helped if I had a visual component. Like if there is there a map? I do want the physical copy of this book, but is there a map of the Pacific Crest Trail on the inside cover? I think that was one of the things that they had said when I was listening to it, was just like, oh, it's for the PDF of this and this, like go to this website, which I didn't do because like when I listen to audiobooks, like I'm not necessarily on the computer unless I'm at work. So but it was fine. I think I rated it 4 stars. Like yeah, it did get a little like meandery at times, but and ultimately like there was a point where I realized like she's not gonna find those people. So, but it was still an interesting story, and I think, and it was crazy to me just because I do see missing people, like missing people articles on the news like every other month, it feels like, if not once a month, or like someone's body being found because and like their family saying that they were an experienced hiker that was familiar with the area. And it's like, it's crazy just how often that happens, particularly in California, but like I know it happens too in Oregon and Washington. In fact, even here locally, we get missing people all the time, particularly when mushrooms are being foraged. So we just had like 3 missing people like last month. So it was interesting. It was entertaining to a good degree, as much as I can say that without it being weird that it's about missing people. This is like one of those true crime things that feels really odd to me, but I think Andrea Langford did it to the best of her ability. So next, I ended up finding a book, actually. I guess this is a graphic novel from my own library. It was new, and thankfully Access Services, where the department I work within, is one of the first people to see the new books outside of acquisitions themselves, and so they give it to us to be able to shelve it into our main stacks. So I grabbed this because I saw it and I wanted it. But that is Earth Divers Killing Columbus by Stephen Graham Jones. I had not heard about this. It is on this Indigenous authors release, new releases, I think. We have a list somewhere. I think it was on there. I need to start paying more attention to it. But I was super excited about this. Stephen Graham Jones tends to be hit or miss for me. I've loved All the Good Indians, or The Only Good Indian, but did not like My Heart is a Chainsaw. But this one was really intriguing. This is a graphic novel. We are following a group of Indigenous adults, I feel like they're adults, who are, I believe, in the Navajo Nation, and they're searching for something. It's a portal of sorts, a time portal, and they've decided that they want to change history because currently they are living in a dystopian future where all the water has run dry. They no longer know what whales are because they have been extinct for so long. The rich white folks have left Earth to go colonize Mars, or like basically everyone who could leave left Earth, and so now Earth is just kind of like the sad little bit of thing. But we are following this group of Indigenous adults. One of them, I believe, is trans, and they decide that our main character, who I forgot his name already, is going back into the past and boarding Columbus's ship and is going to kill him before he gets to the new world. And hopefully that will change the future. Really interesting, really graphic. It's Stephen Graham Jones, so there is a bit of blood and murder and death and some creepy horror elements that kind of messes with your mind a little bit. But ultimately, really enjoyed it. I think I rated this at like a 4.5. Not quite a 5-star because we are getting, I mean, yeah, it's like a high 4, but I'm excited to see where this goes, because the end of this, like, the whole time, right, the others that are left in the Navajo Nation there's something else going on, right? And so there's more to this time portal than what they expected. So I'm interested to see where this graphic series goes. And yeah, I think I'm going to have to just get physical copies because I'm going to want to reread these, I think. So next, I ended up reading a Book of the Month book. So that was one that was checked off. The Unmaking of Jude Pharaoh by Adrienne Young. This one we are following Jude Pharaoh, who believes that she is, because of her family, she is like getting ready to experience kind of like the downgrade in her mental health. She believes this is something that she knows that this is something that's happened in her lineage for a while. It happened to her mother, it's happening to her grandmother, and so when her grandmother dies, it's been like a year since June has been hearing things that aren't really there, been seeing things that aren't really there, and ultimately, like, she doesn't say anything because her grandmother is in such a state. But when after her grandmother dies, June ends up finding this picture, and she recognizes it right away of her mother, but who she's with and the date on the back doesn't make sense. She's with a man that was known to be in the area in the early 1900s, so like 1911 or something. But like, I believe June's main timeline is in the 1990s. No, it's in 2014, I think. It's in 2014, and so like that doesn't make any sense. So what? But then when her grandmother's friend Bertie hands her a note saying, with an address on it and saying, "Trust me," June goes to that address and finds a door. It's not connected to anything, and she is real tempted to go through it. Yeah, this one was really fun. I feel like this was my other 4.5 star. I really enjoyed it. It was a great narration. I believe it was it Julia Whalen who like narrated it? I feel like it was. Who was it? No, Brittany Presley was the one who narrated it. I thought Brittany Presley did a really good job. But yeah, ultimately really enjoyed it. My one thing is that at the very end, Adrienne Young expresses that at the time that this is set, so I say 2014, I don't really necessarily want, it's a time travel book. So in 1911, in where this is set, and which I believe is North Carolina, folks of color are still experiencing Jim Crow laws, and they aren't, we understand that their experience is shitty because of this. But what Adrienne Young had stated was that she was trying to there was still entrepreneurship, right? There were still black folks that were able to have businesses and have, be able to make a name for themselves. And so she was trying to represent that in this. My only thing though is that like, I don't remember that. Like she stated that and I'm like, wait, where, when? There was like a couple of businesses that they had gone into that outside of their own, but there was like no specific like thing of just like, oh, this like dark colored man owned this business and this, like there was no obvious mention of it. In my opinion, anyone we encountered in here, I just assumed was white because there was like nothing to say otherwise. So I was really kind of confused at that notion. But otherwise, like, if you're gonna make entrepreneurial people of color during the era of Jim Crow laws, wouldn't you make it more obvious that the business owners were of color? Because yeah, I just assumed that they were all white. I don't know, maybe that's just like weird of me to presume, but that because of the publishing industry, that's how I'm feeling like it's kind of just known. It is just this white unless otherwise stated. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. Otherwise, I thought it was a really great book. I'm excited to see more of Adrienne Young's work, which I believe The Spells of Forgetting is on my April TBR. So if you haven't checked out my April TBR, I encourage you to do so. But I believe that is. Otherwise, I really did enjoy this. So next, I also listened to The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm by Christopher Paolini. This is by Partners Coffee, which doesn't have a dust jacket, so I will have the cover here. But ultimately, this is like a short story collection of sorts of like the after. Okay, so this is essentially like an extension or continuation of the Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. This is the Dragon Rider Quartet. If you don't know what that is, if you don't know what that quartet is, we are following Aragon, who is a young boy who ends up finding a dragon egg, and the dragon egg ends up hatching, and out comes this little blue dragon he calls Saphira, and he gets swept into the world of dragon riders, which everyone thought was basically killed off. Turns out not all of them. So he gets swept into the politics and the the threats that is the kingdom, and it's an interesting quartet. It's the heavy quartet, but this is essentially the a couple of short stories of after. I know that Christopher Paolini also just recently, back in November, released Murtagh, which I think is also a continuation of the Inheritance Cycle. I'm not sure what he's calling it. I don't know if he's calling it like if he's having it called 5 or whatever, which is like fine, but it bugs me because like Murtagh's dragon was already on the cover of a book, and to have Murtagh and a dragon just kind of like throws off the entire other book's like covers. I don't know. But I haven't read that yet. We do have it. The Inheritance Cycle is one of Brad's favorite books, book series. He's read it again and again throughout, and since he was in middle school. So it's been a couple years now since I read it, but ultimately finished this, enjoyed it for the most part. It was an interesting continuation to see how everything was faring after the events of the fourth book. I am curious about what Murtagh's about. I haven't read it because I didn't want to spoil it for myself, or I haven't read the synopsis. So yeah. Okay. Next one fulfilled my canceling cologne trainer card, which is an item. So it's to read a book from the library, and with that I was able to read this one, which also doesn't have a dust jacket, so I'll just put it up here. But this is Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. This is my first Fonda Lee. No, I have not read the Jade saga. I wanted to start off with something small first, but this one we are following Esther, whose family, whose mother and baby brother got killed by a manticore, and since then she's been wanting to kill manticores. So she goes into this career where she basically starts training into a career that to train birds that are the only thing that can kill manticores, which are rocs. R-O-C. not like rocks, but like these giant birds, and things ensue. It was ultimately really kind of fun. I think it's just kind of, I feel like there could have had more depth to it. It was fine. I did have to look up what a manticore was, and basically my brother helped me by going, like, I'm just like, because I just Googled it and was like, there's so many different variations, like what is a manticore? And he's like, well, depends what version like they're going based off of. You know, like, well, supposedly the only thing that can kill him is a rock. And he's like, oh, so yeah, you want to go D&D E5. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I got my D&D E5 monster book and like looked up what a manticore and a rock looked like. Holy crap, I'd piss myself too if a manticore was after me. That I thought was really entertaining in terms of any time like they were hunting manticores, or there was a manticore involved, in terms of like how scared everybody was and how reliant they were on these rocks to do their job, despite them being so finicky and very proud birds, and having and ultimately like putting their trust in their training and in their birds. So that's what I really kind of appreciated. I feel like this could have been longer. This basically, like, how would I even describe this? It almost feels like it's in the realm of Legends and Lattes, but like, you know, in the same universe, like D&D 5e, but like maybe a different continent or something. That's just me though. I don't know, it was fun. I do kind of want a physical copy to own for myself, because I kind of like being able to connect things to D&D 5e. I don't play all that much, if at all. But I like the references, and I personally really enjoy the monsters, so I thought this was really fun. It is only, I think I only rated it like a 4 or 3 or something, but it was fun. I'm intrigued to see if Fonda Lee puts out anything else similar to this, or because of, I think this one got kind of like negative reviews because it was nothing like the Jade Saga. But ultimately I'm curious if she puts out anything further in this realm of in publishing. But otherwise I am curious about the Jade Saga. I'll probably like get a library book for it first before committing myself, but we'll see. Next was another unexpected read. It was just because it was available through Libby, and that was The Book of Night by Holly Black. So I'm all caught up again with Book of the Month books. I did not read any in February, so I have heard mixed things about this book. Actually, mostly all negative. So I have not read a Holly Black before. This one we are following Charlie, and she's living in this world. It's similar to ours, but there's shadow magic. Basically, you can get your shadow altered, and that will like help you in some way, some little way of like either you can levitate a little bit, but or you can like be like even more powerful of sorts, in terms of if your shadow is quickened, you can like utilize it further. I don't know. It was never really explained, and that is a common complaint with this book, is that no one really quite has the grasp of this shadow magic. Charlie, though, oh my god, so she was bothersome to me because she was constantly okay, so I'm trying to describe the plot. Ultimately, Charlie feels like she has made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. So after she decides that she's no longer making bad decisions, she's just going to work and help her sister get into university and like be a good girlfriend to her boyfriend. Like, that's what she wants to do. However, she ends up getting involved with someone ends up asking her for a favor in terms of ensuring, basically finding their husband, fiance, father of their kids. Because since Charlie quit her other job, he's kind of taking over and believes that he's better than Charlie ever could be. He's not. But because of that, like, his baby mama is really pissed off at Charlie because she believes it's Charlie's fault. So it's Charlie's job to go find him. Charlie doesn't think that's true, that's his own prerogative, but this baby mama has connections to the university that she wants her sister to go to. So if she can just delay some payments for a little bit, like, she'll go find this person. And that gets Charlie into some deep shit, into some much more complicated bullshit. It was weird. Something about, like, turns out everyone's looking for this book of night. Libro Nocturnum is what they keep calling it. And like, someone's looking for it, is willing to pay so much money for it. Someone else has a chapter of it. He ends up dying. Ultimately, it all goes round and round. And for some reason, Charlie, like, can't stay out of it. She has to go into it with the excuse of, well, I keep making bad decisions. I might as well keep making bad decisions. So Charlie was infuriating. Also, supposedly, like, someone kept saying, like, oh, there's occasional markers of, like, oh, you know, they've actually had a t-shirt in my size. And what was it? She put on pants and they were a size. I'm like, oh, so like when she was like, oh, they actually had a t-shirt that fit me. I'm like, oh, okay, is she supposed to be plus size? That's pretty cool. But then she was like, oh, these size 14 pants. I'm like, you're not that plus size, babe. That's pretty average. Like, oh, come on. That's not, no. You're maybe a bigger than most supermodels, if not all of them, but like, 14 is pretty average. Try size 20, 24. Try, and at this point, I feel like a lot of stores are actually getting the hang of getting a little bit plus size, but like, still not enough, in terms of, going to 1, 2, 3X that are often like up to a bust size of 49 inches. Still not enough. So I don't know. It feels like it wasn't quite hitting the mark in terms of plus size rep for me. Also, this is like, I don't know. It was odd. Will I read it? The ending kind of had me intrigued and wanting to go into the second one, if it ever comes out, because I think this one got some negative reviews. But I don't know if I'm necessarily that interested to continue on with it. Like, overall, it was an entertaining read. I read the whole thing. I listened to the whole thing. But Charlie was painful. And it was all just kind of ridiculous. There was absolutely no reason for her to be into it. But the whole, like, pity me, I'm I'm the worst person ever. I make the bad decision, so of course this happens to me. Like, it's so annoying and got so old so quick. And I'm just like, shut up. Let's move on. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is one of my 2.5 stars or something. So I probably won't go on with the other book, but at least this is done and I'm caught up with my book of the month. So next, I ended up reading A Proposal They Can't Refuse by Natalie Kanya. This I think I got as an ALC, maybe? If not, I got it on sale from Libro. I will have my affiliate link down in the description down below if you ever want to check them out. They're pretty amazing. $14.99 a month, same as Audible, except it's not going to Amazon's pockets. You're actually getting to choose. You get to choose where some of that profit goes to independent bookstores. So, A Proposal They Can't Refuse. This is the first book in the Vega family love stories, and so this is a romance series by Natalie Kanya, and basically we are following Camila Vega, who is desperate to convince her family to update their Puerto Rican restaurant in Chicago. And we are also following Liam Kane, who has spent a decade working to turn his family's distillery into a contender for like some kind of whiskey competition in Chicago. Their grandfathers are like brothers. They fought in, I believe, World War II together, or was it Vietnam? They fought in a war together and have been brothers ever since, and are constantly making trouble for Liam and Camila. And Liam and Camila are constantly bickering. So when the two grandfathers notice this, they decide to hatch up a scheme and try to get both their grandkids to work together in an unconventional way to be able to get their way. It's not an enemies to lovers, not truly. It's very much a friends to lovers. They used to be friends as kids. Something happened and now they're not enemies necessarily, but they annoy the shit out of each other, and now suddenly, of course, with this deal, they're gonna fall in love. So it was actually really fun. I liked the banter in here. It was really fun. I enjoyed the commentary. I really enjoyed when Camila stood up to her family, particularly. There was a bit of a fallout. And I definitely would look out content warning, just because like we are dealing with a pretty prominent side character that does have cancer, and we are talking about grief and loss because something else has happened in Liam's life and something else that happened in Camila's life. So, but I really did enjoy the commentary in here, the discussion of grief and loss, as well as like not blaming yourself, as well as like personal growth. But I also really like the fun aspect in terms of the banter, in terms of the, like, there was sass. I liked it. So this was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And the grandfathers were great. I love them. They were so great. This did have me tear up towards the end. I will say that. So yeah, I just loved it. This was fun. Next, I ended up reading World of Lore Monstrous Creatures by Erin Mankey. This is the first book in the World of Lore series. There's like 3 of them. And basically this is a nonfiction horror history book dealing with basically cryptids of sorts. Erin Mankey kind of goes over the history of some of the cryptids that are pretty well known throughout the world: vampires, werewolves, Mothman. So I thought it was really fun. I have listened to Lore, the podcast, off and on, and really do enjoy it. So this, I haven't listened to it for a while. Lore, just the cover with the red and the people just like hit right for the Team Blood for Realmathon. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. Okay. Ultimately, I think I rated it. I didn't rate it. What did I rate it? Oh, I rated it like 3.5. Like, it was good. Like, I still would want a physical copy of it. But I remember I like spaced out a little bit. I don't know. I don't know why I rated it 3.5. I think it was fine. So, and then next, I actually finished a series, which I'm really proud of myself for doing. And that is The Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This one also worked for a Pokemon Chooses My TBR. This was for the Hisuian Sneasel, which is a dark Pokemon, which is to read a horror, and this is a middle grade horror. This is the third book in the Cassidy Blake series by Victoria Schwab. Basically, Cassidy Blake, like a year ago, nearly died by drowning, and her life was saved by a ghost. This ghost is now her best friend, Jacob. And her mother and father are a historian and like a paranormal investigator, and they are starting a TV show called The Investigators, where they are going to the more known haunted places to go over the history as well as paranormal activity. So the first book, City of Ghosts, they go to Edinburgh, and it turns out that because Cassidy was so close to death that she is now like what she calls an in-betweener. She can go beyond the veil to see and she sees ghosts, she hears ghosts, and so going beyond the veil, she is trying to send ghosts back or send ghosts beyond. And when in Edinburgh, she gets in a bit of trouble and ends up catching the eye of one particular ghost. And then in the second one, Tunnel of Bones, they are in Paris, France, where she goes into the catacombs and ends up finding a poltergeist. And in this third one, we are in New Orleans, and she's realizing that something is after her. So I didn't have high hopes for this, in all honesty. I have some thoughts on Victoria Schwab, but because I finished the series, I will explore more on that in another video soon. Otherwise, I didn't have much hope for this, really, mostly because like the first and second book kind of disappointed me in a way, and it was just kind of underwhelming. And then this one I was actually surprised with. I feel like there was more stakes, and these steaks were like cooked perfectly, and I'm just medium rare and like maybe a little too much seasoning, but or like still not quite enough seasoning, but it was enough to like really enjoy it when I had it. So throughout like the first half of this book, I was like, I'm gonna get rid of these books, like I'm not interested anymore, it's just not working for me. And then by the end of the book, I'm like, I'll keep these are good, okay. So take that as you will. And then the last book that I read for the month of March was actually another novella series that I was able to finish, and that was Below Zero by Adley Hazelwood. So I read the first two in February, and I read them out of order. I was actually really excited for Below Zero because to me, like, Under One Roof and Stuck With You, like kept kind of like buying for a higher score. Like I liked the smut in Stuck With You, but I enjoyed the connection we had to the characters in Under One Roof. So I was like, okay, third one has to be like a good combination of the two, right? No, not whatsoever. Below Zero is my least favorite. So we are following Hannah. So in Under One Roof, we were following Mara. In the second one, Stuck With You, we were following Sadie. In this third one, Below Zero, we were following Hannah, who works with NASA and goes in, like, we open up in Norway. She's stuck in a crevasse with a twisted ankle or sprained ankle, and someone is on their way, even though she was told like rescue couldn't get to her for hours, like not till morning. So she was supposed to like bear it throughout the night during this snowstorm. The guy who's coming to rescue her, I believe, is Liam. I don't remember his name. Anyway, it was the love interest, and it turns out that she met him like 4.5 years prior. It's one of Mara's distant relatives, and like she had to interview him for an assignment for her, was it her PhD or her master's? Must have been her PhD. Anyway, they hit it off right away, and actually like kind of sort of had an intimate ending to them in terms of like not quite sex, but it was pretty there. Enjoyed that, but Hannah didn't want to take it further. He wanted to take her out to dinner. She didn't want that. She has no time and no energy for a romantic relationship, so she tends to just use people for sex, which is all fine and good, like, you do you. But then she realized that like 4 years later they work at NASA together, and I don't know, there was just like a lack in this one. I feel like there was a lack of, like, Hannah kept going back to the time where they didn't have sex but had an intimate moment, like had the best orgasm of her life but didn't have sex. When she interviewed him, she kept going back to that, and that was supposed to sustain us throughout the whole book. But then she also like had this apparent need to not want to learn more about this love interest, and like tried to avoid him or like not think about him. Like, they didn't really have a connection with me, or they didn't really have a connection, really. I wasn't really rooting for them. So like when it turns out that they work for NASA, and like he professed his love to her towards the end there, I was just like, where is this coming from? Like, how do you know her? Like, so they both supposedly knew each other, and like amazingly it worked out because he like was great. It turned out to be like fantastic friends with Mara and Sadie's boyfriends. They like hit it off great, but like it was just, I didn't like it. There was so much disconnect and so many plot holes. I was not a fan. Also, what threw me off as well is that the narrator, who does a great job, I forget who it is, let me look it up. Savannah Peachwood is the one that, I'm sorry, what? Savannah Peachwood does the narration for all 3 of these feminist series. And throughout each one, it was just bothersome to me. Like, it just didn't feel like this was supposed to be Hannah. This didn't seem like the same Hannah as the other ones, particularly because like this Hannah and Below Zero, like she didn't really want to be friends with Mara and Sadie. They kind of just forced her to be, and it started off as like an experiment. So, but then like they wormed her way into her heart, and it's like, this doesn't sound like the same Hannah. Hannah seemed a lot more friendly, a lot more open to friendships. This doesn't sound right. So I don't know. Okay, anyway, those are the books that I read for the month of March. I don't know how many points I actually submitted for Realmathon, but this is the graphic that I have and which books I submitted for it. Like I said, Trail of the Lost is not on here because I mostly started reading or read that in February and happened to finish it in March. I do have 2 books that I'm in the middle of that one was on my March TBR, and I'm still hoping to finish it for April, hopefully. The other wasn't, but I'm still hoping to finish it for April, so we'll see. But yeah, I think that's it. I think this has gone on long enough. Thank you so much for your support. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe if you have yet to do so. Otherwise, let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what your thoughts were down in the comments down below. If you don't feel like answering and don't have the spoons, let's go ahead and put some kind of cold emoji, whether it's a snowflake or something of the sort, just because I'm looking at the Below Zero title, not cover art, so that's what I'm thinking of right now. So otherwise, I hope that you were in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I will see you in another video very soon. Chew.